On Tuesday, May 16th, 2017. Looks like we have all council members here. The mayor asked to be excused. He's sick, and so we'll take it from here. I've asked Deon Giles to do the Pledge of Allegiance and opening remarks by Diana Anderson.
The audience, please rise. Please repeat the pledge after me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father in heaven, we are very grateful for the opportunity that we have to gather as neighbors tonight at the City Council meeting. We ask that Thy Spirit will be with us, that we will be able to open our minds and listen. Relationships that we have, we're grateful.
Diana, thank you. Deon, thank you. For tonight's approval meeting agenda, I know of a couple items. 9D, Jennifer Baptista told us that 9D was continued in Planning Commission. So, Ken, is that true on this item?
9E?
Yeah.
D?
Yes,
Okay,
9D is continued.
Is continued. And then I also have 11A because the mayor would like to discuss this item but is not present. Is there anything else?
Yeah, both those would be to June 6th.
June 6th? Okay, anything else on the agenda? We're good? That said,
Everything else is fine.
okay. That said, I'll take a motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as written with the continuance of item 9D and the removal of item 11A until a future date.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ben, a second by Diana. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now is the time for open session. We do have some public hearing items, but if your item is not that, please feel to get up and discuss anything you'd like to about our great city.
My name is Lori Williams, and I would like to address something that I feel is really important, and I've noticed it for a while. I hear about how transparent our city is, and I've noticed a pattern that's become increasingly common, and it points to a broad issue that continues to damage the city's credibility and further the divide. I like to read and listen to the audio of council meetings. I have seen added paragraphs of explanations that have been added and never said by our attorney. I constantly see things phrased and worded differently that may or may not be subtle to change the context of a conversation that went on. And I realize that things need to be condensed, but I'd like to point out a recent event. On 4/18, a young man got up and gave a speech about online bullying and how it happened to his mom. A week earlier during a work session, the meeting was interrupted as I was accused by a councilwoman by doing something that I did not do or had no knowledge of who did it. So then the next week, her son gave a wonderful speech about bullying online, etc. And I thought it was great. And it's reflected in the draft minutes to be approved tonight that almost everything that was said on the presentation with the young man was almost word for word verbatim. And I got up and said something about an experience I had with a councilwoman that was accusing me of the very thing that her son was talking about the week before. I also mentioned how my boy had taken his life by suicide and how it starts with leadership in the home. And then in the minutes it says, she made a mention of suicide. And there's like 3 sentences of what I had said, and it was so condensed down. And that's another subtlety that it really bothers me. And I would hope that the message in the minutes, what I'm saying tonight, are articulated, and it's word for word in the next meeting. or I'm sorry, that's in the approved minutes, because I think that things that are supposed to be truth are not, are bias, they are biased and they are agenda driven. And I think it's subtle, and you have to listen, you have to really watch, and you have to study. But there's so many things that have been changed, and I just think if we're going to be truthful and transparent, we need to do it starting with the city. That's all.
Lori, what meeting was that again? Can you reference that again?
418.
14.
The week before was a work session.
Thank you.
And if you'd like, I could even explain what was said by our city attorney. And that was done on it was about Strawberry Days when she was giving a presentation. She says, for some reason or another, 1988 was a key year for records, and our city actually contains a similar one that Jason, I assume, is going to give us in the minutes on finance at the end of the celebration, and that is the only document I could find where the finances were shared with the city. But yet here I have 3 paragraphs where it says, this is the approved minutes. The file in its file minutes from 1988 Strawberry Days Association meeting, where it was noted that the bylaws were being changed and that the notice of changes needed to be mailed out 30 days prior to voting. The documents also indicate that the City of Pleasant Grove was not involved in the changes. Attorney Peterson explained that this Strawberry Days Association has operated as its own separate entity in all situations. 1991 shows a revolving line of credit with First Security Bank in favor of Strawberry Days Association and Pleasant Grove as co-signer, thereby identifying 2 separate entities. The Strawberry Days Association this is all, none of this was ever said. What?
You can hand that to us if you'd like. You can give us a copy of it. We already have a copy, obviously, but do you have
A
anything
check
else?
was then issued to the Strawberry Days Association for the reimbursement amount. The same process also takes place vice versa, which is consistent with the 2 entities being separate. It was noted that Peterson explained that this was not the first time duties and finances have needed. So
Thank you.
anyways, that was all added and it was never said at all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't know if mine has
If you-
anything to do with.
Just state your name and you're good to go.
Okay. Jaylene McFarland. I have some really strong objections about the developer's proposal for 69 South Main Street. In case everyone is not aware, a developer is planning on destroying the historic house at 67 South Main Street. Sorry, 67, not 69, with plans to build a 5-story apartment complex. My first objection involves the increase of traffic. The roads on Main Street and around Main Street are very small and can't support that amount of increased traffic. Also, there are buses that travel up and down Main Street, and having traffic exit onto Main Street is going to cause many problems. If the traffic exits behind the buildings, they will be running into City Hall and library parking lots, which condition will be hazard to the library and City Hall patrons. Parking for the library is already difficult and hazardous, especially if you add traffic for apartment residents and those who visit them, it will almost be impossible. My second objection, multifamily housing in our downtown business district. We all want to revitalize downtown, but giving it over to apartment housing is not the way. It will ruin the district. We need to increase the small businesses we have, not add more multifamily housing. My third objection, transient housing does not build a community, and apartments are inherently transient. People who live there are not invested in the community. They do not intend to stay there more than a few years. Pleasant Grove already has too much transient housing. We don't want to keep adding more. My fourth objection is historic preservation. You are systematically destroying our heritage piece by piece. People choose to live in Pleasant Grove for the small town community feel. We don't want our town to lose our identity. Please don't ruin the single historic block that we have left. Given this, does anybody support a 5-story building right down on Main Street? Apartments.
We just like you to keep your comments to the council right here, and thank you.
Does anybody here support it?
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Peter Steele. Just wanted to make a comment about the First East project, which is coming up that the county is working on right now. This is a rare opportunity to add bike lanes in Pleasant Grove at a minimal cost to the city, because most of the money's coming from the county or from the state. So I think according to the city's bike and pedestrian plan, buffered bike lanes on First East are the top priority project in the city. And again, according to that plan, it should cost about $100,000 to add them the length of the road in Pleasant Grove. And essentially, this is the last chance to add them, probably for close to 2 decades, until this county repaves the road before handing it back to the city. So I'd encourage you. The big objection, I would think there will be the room for them, but the big objection is that it would require the elimination of on-street parking for the remaining areas where that's allowed on First East, although it's not allowed on a lot of the road. And so I'd encourage you to consider that and consider encouraging the county to include bike lanes in their plans. Thanks.
Thank you.
Really
Thanks,
quick.
Peter.
Marty, oh, is Marty?
Marty's not here.
John, do you happen to know in the open house for
I
First
don't.
East? Okay. I know it's coming up in June, and that would be another good time to voice
no,
that.
no,
So we'll
I'm
make
not
sure,
intending
but
that.
thank you for coming
I just
on.
figured if they're going to consider eliminating on-street parking, they're going to want a push from the city
Right,
council.
and that's awesome. And let's have you come to the open house too. I'll make sure I let you know when that is. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, can you speak to the timing of that? What's on the plan already, and what we would be able to do when we would need to do it?
Yeah, right now the test. I don't even know if that's working.
Here, use mine.
How's this? A little better?
Better.
Right now, the road is in design phase through the county. It's the county's project. They're the ones that are just brought an engineer on to design it. The design's going to take a few months. As far as that's concerned, I think they are doing the open houses to get a little feedback on things of that nature. If everything falls into place, they might be able to start doing a little bit of the project in the fall, I think, which would be more of the underground stuff. There's I think Cedar Hills is doing a sewer line. We're doing a water line in that road. And then the paving will be likely next spring, summer, early summer, whenever the weather allows it to happen. So is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm wondering specifically about the bike lanes. There's no bike lanes in the current plans that the county's looking at, is that right?
No.
And if we wanted to add that, what would be our drop dead moment to get that added?
That's probably more of a Marty question. John, would you know that?
I don't know.
I know Marty's the one that's attending
Okay.
those meetings, so if we want to, I can
Okay.
follow up with Marty and check that out.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
I was itching to get up. The Jacobs aunts. I was itching to get up. I got up like 3 times, and it kind of dumb. Happens. So recently there was at the Pleasant Grove Library. They had an event there. We were all there. It was awesome. Got some funding to fix up the library. That was great. And upon leaving, I noticed that there were some handbills that were placed on the cars. And I found out that there's actually a code here in Pleasant Grove. It's 387. That it shall be unlawful for any person to distribute, deposit, throw, scatter, or cast any commercial or non-commercial handbill in or upon any automobile or other vehicle. For me, I think if this particular ordinance doesn't get enforced, then we should probably just get rid of it. So I would enjoy maybe if the city council could look at this ordinance and decide if it's one that we want to keep. If it is, then let's enforce it. If not, then I say let's throw it out. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Jacob. Hey, Tina, maybe you could speak to what the process would be if we wanted to enforce that code.
It's the same process as for any code, right? If someone observes a violation of the law, you have to report it and then have somebody that you are alleging committed the violation, and then the police officer decides whether or not to issue a citation.
So any citizen that has concerns could just reach out to the police.
Yeah,
that
I
would be what
think
we
in
would
that
recommend.
case it would be difficult to find, figure out who placed them unless you saw somebody doing it. But I think Jacob's point is well taken. Perhaps it's an ordinance that's been on the books for a long time, and maybe we need to look at whether or not that's what we still want or if we want to modify it. I would have some concerns about enforcing it as it's currently written with regard to political speech. I'm sure you're aware of the constitutional protections. Those are usually exempted from sign ordinances and other types of regulations. So even if we did want to amend it, I'd want to make sure we made provisions for political speech.
Makes sense. Thanks, Tina.
Anyone else for open session? And okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Okay, we'll move on to consent items. Everyone have a chance to look them over.
On the subject of discussion of the consent items, do we want to consider a continuance of item 6A, given a concern expressed in our open session about the very minutes here and whether they accurately reflect the statements of some members of the public?
Sure, you can have them reviewed. I mean, just make a recommendation.
Yeah, I would propose that we approve the consent items with a continuance of item 6A and bring those up on our next meeting in case the public, there may be other members of the public have further concerns. But we heard some in this very open session about that council meeting minute.
So, sorry, we'll need a direction on if you want the minutes changed in some manner besides what's in front of you.
Right.
So if you want to give us direction on that, then we can change the minutes to reflect what the council would like to have them say.
I'd like to review them in greater detail in light of the concern I've heard this meeting, but it may make sense to have residents that have concerns about the way that their own comments have been recorded, to have those be verbatim recordings. If we could do a verbatim transcript of residents that have concerns.
Yeah, so just so we understand the process, when the meeting is over, Kathy sends it to a transcriber. So Kathy doesn't do it. We hire somebody out. They transcribe the minutes. They live in St. George or whatever, and they send them back. Kathy does a review. Tina does a review as far as looking over the grammatical stuff and things like that, generally speaking. Then we get it in front of the city council, and the city council reviews it. And that's the time when the city council can say, the way that my comment was reflected is inconsistent with what my intent was, and here's what I would like the meetings to reflect, or the minutes to reflect. And so what's being asked is, if we're going to pull this and review it, we want feedback from you to say, this is what we want the minutes to say. And if the city council says for this particular meeting that we want Lori's comments or other comments verbatim, then we'll go through and we'll make that change and we'll put it on the next agenda.
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just did. I make the motion that we pull the item 6A, the city council minutes for the April 18th, 2017 meeting, and that we transcribe the comments of Lori Williams verbatim.
We have a motion by Ben. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Diana. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. There you go.
I do want to just verify, when I'm reviewing the minutes, I'm actually only going over my statements as well.
And that's what I tend to do too, yeah.
So I would imagine that most everyone reviews the minutes that way. So I'm not looking specifically for other people and how they're commenting.
Well, and the minutes are one reflection of what the meeting is. We do have an audio recording. We do have a video recording. So there are avenues to make sure. I mean, the beauty of those is you can hear the tone. You can hear you get a better sense of the intent. You read minutes, and I go back reading something from 10 years ago, and it sounds like a boring council meeting. And if I were probably to watch it, it would probably be anything but boring. So those help provide a context into the intent of the comments, and I think that's important.
So I do want to ask, though, is there a cost? Is there an extra cost to that procedure that he's just asked?
For this in particular, we'll just have Kathy review it and do it. We're not going to send it back to the lady in St. George.
There's a staff time cost.
It's a time. That's not going to take too long.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
All right.
If the intent is that we do that for every single public comment, then that's a different story. But if we have a request from a citizen and the council says that's okay, That's not a problem. We'll do that. Sorry.
Any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so it looks like, oh, sorry, I'm trying to ignore you.
He was just saying, the minutes are intended to be a summary.
Yes.
They're not intended to be word for word. And so, again, if somebody reads through those and feels like their comments were misconstrued, and there's a request to do it verbatim, then we can do that to make sure that is taken care of. That's not a problem. But to do every single comment verbatim in the minutes, and I know that's not what's being asked, but that's a different reflection of what the purpose of minutes are. So.
Okay.
And I'm usually grateful that it's a summary, and I'm usually surprised that most of the swear words are not in there. But I guess that I am keeping those in here.
All right, so it looks like we don't have any board, commissioner, committee appointments or presentations, so we'll move right into item number 9A, public hearing to consider the adoption of ordinance 2017-25, amending the city code regarding approval of final plats, amending sections 11-2-7, 11-2-10, 11-4-1, 11-5-1, 11-7-1, and 11-7-2, a couple more, 11-7-4, and 11-7-5. The amendments will provide for administrative approval of minor final plats having 3 or less lots and other related code updates. Director Young.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, this is something we've been working on for a while, and we've discussed quite a bit already, so let me know if you have any questions, but I'm going to make my review fairly brief. It is a city application, and this really reflects the final stage of approval for plats. So it doesn't affect anything that goes forward as a preliminary plat to Planning Commission, but as they go forward to City Council for approval, it's where it would make a difference. So I'm just going to briefly review some of the stuff that's in the staff report. Well, again, minor plats are what we consider to be 3 or less lots, and major plats are 4 or more lots. And definition here is for final approval, the signing of the final plat by 1, the City Council for major final plats, including all plats having more than 3 lots, road dedications and or city easements, or 2, by the city engineer for minor plats having 3 or less lots. Okay, so staff considers this process to make it faster and less onerous, and therefore we have proposed this new method. We propose that all minor subdivisions that are not involved in the process of having to dedicate a road or easement to the city could receive final approval from Pleasant Grove City Engineer after obtaining preliminary approval by the Planning Commission during a public hearing. This proposal would benefit the city in that a faster response would be given to the applicant, since the item does not have to be scheduled for an additional meeting during City Council, and the final approval is not tied to an already established schedule for the occurrence of City Council. This proposal applies to both residential and commercial subdivisions. Subdivisions that have 4 lots or more will go through the existing approval process. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission on April 27th, and unanimous recommendation for approval.
Any questions for Director Young?
And we've talked about this before, but we are getting a commitment that we'll be able to hear a little update of some kind about the minor plats that get
That is the intent, yes.
Do we know how frequently that will be?
Well, we can do it on a monthly basis. That was the intent.
Great. Thanks for the good work on this. I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. All right, this is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to the public. We'll keep you close, Ken. Any public input? All right, we'll close public hearing and back up here. Any further discussion?
I actually don't find it necessarily cumbersome to review these, and I think with the latest happening with the car lot down the street here, I would feel more comfortable still having it come before us, just for those few in between that just, you know, cause concern for neighborhoods or, you know, whatever it may be. So I'm actually okay leaving it as it was.
Okay, anyone else?
I wonder if there might be a different compromise that might satisfy Councilwoman Lamone. What if we did minors 2 or less, or 1? Does that make more sense? Just a thought. I mean, maybe we could continue this and refine it further if there's.
If I may, in regards to the concern over here with the car lot, that was a zoning issue. The issue also with the assisted living center that came up before that was a zoning issue. So I think those concerns are better addressed at a zoning public hearing. And if I may, that car lot issue was there requested by an applicant and approved by City Council about 7-8 years ago. So that's why that one came about. But their development proposal did not come about right away, and so that's why we're looking at it now.
I just don't feel like it's cumbersome upon me to continue reviewing them at that level. So I'm good. I'm open for a compromise, but I just don't feel that I'm still okay with it coming forward to us.
So, and I understand that those were zoning issues. I do understand, though, the simplicity and of allowing them to approve them, especially with the instead of having to wait, sometimes it could be, putting them off for a couple of weeks. So I'm actually okay with it. I think the issues that we were concerned about were zoning issues as opposed to final plat approvals. So
We have some,
I'm good with it, too.
you're good with it? Okay.
With the change or with the current? With the current?
Oh, with the current or with the?
With the current as
with
said?
the change.
Change, okay.
Well, with this current, Lynn, with the current change as written right now, that's what you're in support of? Okay. So with that said, I'll take a motion and we'll see how it goes.
All right, I make a motion that we approve the amendments of City Code sections as previously listed by Mayor Pro Tem. Or do I have to say them all?
No, you're fine.
Okay. Minor final plat, that's hard to say 3 times right there. Minor final plat approval and adopting the exhibits, conditions, and findings of the staff report. And as modified by the conditions below, all final planning, engineering, and fire department requirements are met. Is that it? Okay.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. And this is by voice, so we'll just go down the line here. Diana?
Yes.
Sid?
No.
Ben?
Sure, yes.
Yes. Lynn?
Yes.
And I'm going to be a no, because I just think that it's not too cumbersome for us on that. So it looks like it passes.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken. Let's see. Okay, next item, looks like this is you too, Ken. Public hearing to consider for adoption of ordinance 2017-26, amending the city code regarding mailing of notices of public hearings to consider land use ordinances, requiring notices to be sent out to property owners affected by the ordinance change unless the change generally and equally affects all properties within a particular district or within the entire city.
Okay, so this is fairly clear, I believe. We're just trying to, this is basically housekeeping and trying to make things a little more clear in how we perform our process of noticing or sending notices out to property owners when a project is being proposed. So the language as it currently exists just says that we need to send out to all affected entities, and describing exactly what that is can be challenging. But what we attempted to do was to limit that so that we're not having to say, well, everybody in the community is going to be affected by this one way or another, vicariously or otherwise. And so we have to send out a mailing notice to every single resident in the community. So what we're trying to do is by adding the verbiage, unless the change generally and equally affects all properties within a particular zoning district or within the entire city. That makes it a lot more clear as to who we're sending notices out to. In the instance of our proposed 5-story building, when we were looking at the height issue, we did attempt to clarify or to make it simplified and direct in our mailing and figuring out a 300 foot notice around the proposed area of the 500-foot area between Center Street and 300 South. So we did that noticing there, but that wasn't dictated by code. There was question brought up, who's being noticed here? So we thought this type of thing would be beneficial in the code to clarify that process. So
Thank you.
this
Any
was
questions?
also
Oh, sorry.
reviewed and unanimously recommended for approval by the Planning
Planning
Commission.
Commission, okay. Sorry, Ken. Any questions for Ken?
Yeah, a quick one. I'm comfortable with this language of within the entire city, but you also have this phrase, this clause, within a particular zoning district. And I'm curious if you happen to know what some of our smallest zoning districts might be. I mean, do we have a zoning district that's just a couple of blocks that would be one where it would not be onerous for us to notice? I don't want to reduce the amount of noticing we do, and I would rather err on the side of over noticing, if that makes sense.
So I think, well, just without pulling up the map, but there is one over there on the wall. Most of our zoning districts are larger in nature than what you're suggesting. There are a couple of smaller pieces, but usually that's a smaller piece that's in conjunction with another area that's also zoned that way. So let's just say, on the other side of town. So we have general commercial zones out over by North County Boulevard. We also have some further down on State Street in other areas. So if we had one project clear over there that needed to have the same zoning district, and then we're noticing people that are, 10 blocks away from it, it doesn't make sense. So I think by and large, we're still going to be covered by this verbiage. It just makes it so that we don't have to notice everybody.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Ken.
Anyone else? We're good? All right, it is a public hearing, so we'll open it up for the public at this time. If you have any questions, please come back up and state your name one more time.
So it sounds like we might save some money by not noticing people. Did we put that money towards roads? Just wondering.
I'll make a note of that.
We're
Jacob.
going to over notice.
Can I just comment, this is what our current practice is. This is going to reflect what our current practice is, just clarifying this is how we do it. So
No savings, Jacob.
So
Sorry.
it doesn't really change anything as far as
Maybe
costs.
the next item. All right, we'll bring it back up here. We'll close the public hearing at this time. Do we have any further discussions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we adopt ordinance 2017-26, amending the city code regarding the mailing of notices of public hearings to consider land use ordinances requiring notices to be sent to property owners affected by the ordinance unless the change generally and equally affects all properties within a particular district or within the entire city, and adopting all the recommendations of the staff report and the planning commission and all of that.
We have a motion by Ben. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Diana. We'll go by voice here. Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric, yes. Diana?
Yes. That was a very unenthusiastic.
I'm sorry,
yes.
I'm just really excited tonight. So, okay, I'll get better. Okay. All right, item 9C, public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-27, amending City Code, Chapter 10-11E, Downtown Village Zone by combining provisions of Chapter 10-13C, Mixed Use Overlay Zone into the Downtown Village Commercial Subdistrict, and revising and combining the provisions regarding permitted uses, density, and various zoning requirements in the commercial and transitional zone subdistricts. Daniel.
Thank you. Oof. Did it suddenly get hot in here or just me? All right. So right now, we have our downtown village zone is divided into 3 different categories. Okay, we have 2 subdistricts, the downtown commercial subdistrict, and we have and the downtown transitional subdistrict. Plus, we have a 3rd category, which is an overlay zone on top of that. If you guys are trying to find out where those rules are, you guys have to go through multiple places in the ordinance. It's not an easy task. When I get phone calls for people with questions, it takes me a minute to find out where they are. So this proposal is trying to simplify that. What we're actually proposing is to repeal City Code 1013C, which is the downtown mixed use overlay zone, the overlay part, and to amend 1011E downtown village zone. So like I was saying before, if you go to chapter 11, article E, that's where we list our downtown village zone. That's where you find everything regarding land use pertaining that zone. And then we have our 2 sub-districts. Then if you go to chapter 13, even a different chapter, and then you go under article C, that's where you find the downtown mixed use overlay. So this proposal is to repeal or to eliminate that one, but not just to throw it away, but we're going to use some language. We're going to use some of the objectives from this downtown mixed use overlay zone to strengthen the downtown commercial subdistrict. So pretty much what we're doing is we are consolidating these two. Okay, so that's one of the objectives. Actually, while I was drafting this ordinance, there were 3 main objectives that I was trying to accomplish. Number 1 was what I was just telling you, the consolidation of the 3 different zones in the area into 2, just to keep the 2 sub-districts. Again, I don't want to use the word elimination because we didn't take completely off the overlay zone. We just merged it, we consolidated into it. Second objective that I tried to accomplish, the staff tried to accomplish, was the removal of most conditional uses in the zone and the addition of a couple new uses. Conditional uses, they don't come to you, right? Because conditional uses is an administrative process that goes to Planning Commission, and a conditional use gets to be approved as long as certain conditions can be met, certain reasonable conditions can be met. Now, those conditions should be already established in the code. So many cities are taking the road where they're eliminating those, because if a staff comes up with those conditions, what we're calling them now is development standards. If we have some certain specific and clear development standards as conditions should be, then there's no need to bring them to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission should not make up some conditions on the spot, but they need to follow what is already established in the code. So then what staff is proposing is to remove those conditional use and add certain development standards, and I try to accomplish that. So right now, if you go to the code, and for example, you go to the downtown village zone commercial subdistrict, you're going to find 2 tables. One table for permitted uses, and then one table for conditional uses, plus the objectives of the zone. If you go to the downtown transitional subdistrict, same thing, you're going to find one table, another table. And the downtown mixed overlay is the same. So I consolidate all those uses into one table, eliminate most of the conditional uses. I still kept a couple, like for example, is that time limit? Oh.
Oh, Daniel.
Yes, Daniel, yes.
Daniel, you have no time limit. You can go as long as you need.
Consolidating all of you. And
We just need you to end before 11 o'clock tonight.
That made me a show in the night. It was called Saved by the Bell, right? Saved by the Bell. So I thought I'm saved. So every single one of these has their own table for conditional and permitted uses. So what I did, like I say, condense them into one single table now, and eliminate most of the conditional uses. Certain conditional uses, for example, restaurants with alcohol, it stay there. I think it's important still for the Planning Commission to take a look at those. So that's the second objective that we're trying to find. I eliminate a couple uses. For example, the car mechanic shops. They were allowed in the downtown. There were other uses that I think they were too intensive for the district, for the downtown district. And then finally, I tried to do some rearrangement. Staff tried to do some rearrangements of the density ratios per zone. Right now, every single one of them have their own density ratio, and in all reality, what I did, I think we decreased a little bit in the ratio. So we went down. We downgraded a little bit on those. So this is just an image to give us an idea. That's how the the 2 sub-districts and the overlay zone looks like. That's how our downtown looks like at this point. Just barely in the recent meetings, we turned this part of the land this tract of land right here we turn it from the commercial subdistrict into the transitional subdistrict. That, I'm pretty sure you guys remember that. That's how it is right now, okay? That's what staff is proposing, the elimination of that and the consolidation and looking like that. Now, these are the density ratios that staff is proposing. In the transitional zone, single family will be allowed, permitted. Duplexes will be permitted. They are at this point, they are permitted as well. And triplexes will only be permitted on lots that are 7,500 square feet or more, because the minimum lot right now for the minimum required area for a lot in the transitional zone is 5,000 square feet, and a duplex is permitted right there. It will be really difficult to fit a triplex. I mean, it's possible, but it will be really difficult and still comply with the setbacks. That's why staff recommends that we get a little more land for those. But we propose that a triplex be permitted in the zone. And if you want to go multifamily, staff proposes that the density will be 10 units per acre. It used to be 12. So we're going to 10 units per acre. And the only way that those that can be utilized is by doing triplexes in the shape of triplexes, and the homes need to look like single family dwelling. So even though it's 10 units per acre, you cannot just stack them all together and do a 4-story building, but you cannot do that. The maximum you can do is a triplex, and it needs to look like a single family dwelling.
So is there maximum height on that?
It is the same height as it was before.
Okay.
Same height. Now, in regards to the commercial subdistrict, this is what staff is proposing. Number one, to keep single family as a permitted use, duplexes as a permitted use, and that right now at this point that's allowed. But everything above that, it will be considered multifamily. And if you want multifamily in this area, in the desire to attract more retail use into the zone, we're saying, hey, if you want to go above a duplex, then you need to bring some retail commercial use within the same building. And the ratio that I'm proposing is that 3 residential units can be allowed per 1,000 square feet of commercial. So that's what I'm proposing. It took us some time to work on this. It's a long ordinance, it's a long amendment, but that's what we have at this point.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel?
Daniel, I think what brought some of this about is I was under the understanding that the development that's at the north end of Main Street, Bella Grace, could be, that same size of building could be built east of 100 East. Is that correct? That same height? I mean, that's what I'm concerned about. So that's why I think we had proposed legislation. That's kind of what triggered that conversation, is a resident had come to me with that same concern. And I thought that was allowed at this time. I just want to see if that's still allowed, that height and that
Dense.
that dense of.
The density, no. The density was
About
reduced.
the height, though.
The height, I'm going to check right now. If you guys give me 1 second.
I could answer that, Daniel.
Okay.
The subdistrict, the transitional subdistrict, as it stands currently, allows for 40 feet of height. But as it is being proposed now, it's 35, which is the same as the rest of our single-family residential. Going down 5 feet, but mostly.
Okay. Thank
Correct.
you.
So that's the number I was looking. From 40, we went down to 35, which is the same.
As
I
in,
repeat the same thing that Ken says. So.
Any other questions for Daniel before his time is up?
Please beep again.
Yeah. All right, so stay close, Daniel. This is a public hearing, so we'll open it to the public at this time. Please come up and state your name if you have questions. All right, seeing no public hearing, we'll close it and bring it back up here to the council.
Appreciate your work on that.
So are we all right with this?
We're
I think we're comfortable with it.
Okay.
I'll take a
I
motion.
love anytime we get to
Reduce the number.
reduce, condense, merge. I like all of those words.
Does that mean you're going to make a motion?
And I'm going to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2017-27, amending City Code Chapter 10-11E, Downtown Village Zone by combining provisions of Chapter 10-13C, Mixed Use Overlay Zone into the Downtown Village Commercial Sub-District, and revising and combining the provisions regarding permitted uses, density, and various zoning requirements in the commercial and transitional sub-districts.
We have-
Second.
And a second by Sid. All right, by voice, Lynn,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Sid,
Yes.
Eric, yes. Diana,
Yes.
okay, is that better?
Yes, much better. You're a person, you're an actual person.
All right, so item 9D is continued. We'll move on to item 9E, and now I can see why the mayor is gone tonight, because there's so
Numbers.
many numbers. Do you want me to read all these?
Yep, it's got to be red ones.
It's got to be red.
All right,
ones.
I'm going to do one for the team here. So public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-29, amending the city code sections 1-11-4-2B, 1-11-5-1E, 2-1-1, 2-1-3, 2-2E-2N, 10-2-3A, 10-2-4G, 10-2-5B, 10-5-2, 10-15-30L, and 10-15-42A, and 10-21-8, 11-1-4, 11-5-1A, 11-9-9, and 11-14-3 relating to replacing the Pleasant Grove City Board of Adjustments with a hearing officer, which is a different type of appeal authority. Director Young, I'm losing my voice now.
That for me, I'm not sure
Good call.
Okay, so we've had some discussion on this for a few meetings now as well, so hopefully there's not a lot of questions, but I just want to emphasize that this is something that's kind of coming down as a recommendation from Utah League of Cities and Towns, that there are various ways to handle hearings or those things that are appeals, variances, and special exceptions, that it does not have to be a Board of Adjustment, which normally, as it works through communities who have had a Board of Adjustments, they're made up of residents who by and large are not real familiar with land use matters or law that may relate to those. And so there have been concerns in various other communities and brought to the state level that perhaps a more efficient way to handle these types of things would be to hire a hearings officer, one that is either well-versed in land uses and planning, or a land use attorney. Those are the recommendations. And so we felt this was a good way to go. We have not had a lot of serious concerns with our Board of Adjustment. However, in the last couple of years, there were a couple of instances that we felt could have been handled better or differently. And we felt that having a hearings officer who understood the land use law would be a better way to go. So we followed that recommendation. This is based on the need, excuse me, of having an appeal authority that is current and keeps up with the constant changes in land use matters. The mayor recently held a meeting with our Board of Adjustment at their last meeting in advance and explained to him what we were proposing to do, to them, what we were proposing to do. And there were questions, but no serious concerns or objections that were raised at that time. I think they understood what we were trying to accomplish. So I have nothing to report negatively from them at that point. And it's important to mention that the functions of our local appeal authority will stay the same regardless of the proposed changes. The main difference now is that those items now will function through a hearings officer. So with this, if this is approved, the city will move forward in advertising for someone who can function as a hearings officer. As you know, our Board of Adjustment does not meet regularly. They meet as needed with applications, and sometimes that's once or twice a year. Again, adding to the problem with keeping abreast with current and law issues and such. So having someone who's always involved with that, I think will be helpful. When they receive applications once or twice a year, they'll be ready to go.
So Ken or Tina, can you walk me through what the process will be now for an applicant who comes in and needs to meet with the hearing officer?
It'll be pretty much the same as what we do right now. They come in, they fill out an application. The application is very specific of the information we're looking for, how they propose to have a variance or an appeal or whatever it is they're looking for. The variance, appeal, or special exception are the only three things. The application looks for specifics, especially in regards to state code. So in the instance of variances, there are 5 criteria that the Board of Adjustment or hearings officer would need to make findings for. And so they need to address each one of those in the application. So we get all that information, and then rather than sending it to our Board of Adjustment, which currently in their bylaws require that they receive that information 30 days in advance of the meeting, which can be quite onerous for an applicant. If they fall off the schedule on the calendar just barely, then they're waiting almost 2 months sometimes to get their hearing. This way we could get that information quickly to a hearings officer and provide our staff report as we would for the Board of Adjustment, giving our recommendations and opinions, and then that hearing will occur with that person. So noticing will be the same, 300 feet to neighbors that are affected. So.
And then they literally come in and meet one-on-one with the hearings officer.
Yes. So the neighborhood could come in and be a part of that process, just the same as the Board of Adjustment.
So Ken, a question for you in 2-1-1, one of the ones I read here, the Board of Adjustment is crossed out now, but the Downtown Advisory Board is in red. Is that just to make them feel special?
Okay.
Or?
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. That was the only thing that really doesn't pertain to the Board of Adjustment. But as we looked at that list of those boards that were listed there, that was one that was missing. So I think that's because when that section was created, we didn't have a Downtown Advisory Board. So it's just adding it in.
Awesome. Okay.
I need to make one note for the council before you take
Tina?
action. I need to make a note. This ordinance is not to take effect until July 1 of 2018. We had that 2017, sorry. We had that language, I thought, in the ordinance. However, I'm noticing the one in my packet has the traditional effective date language, so I'm not sure where the...
So we just need to make a modification on the date?
When you make your motion, you just need to say it's not going to be effective until July 1, 2017. Okay.
And we did have an understanding with the Board of Adjustment that if for some reason we were unable to get a hearings officer in place before July 1, that we would still look to them to help us, and they were willing to do that.
And I'm sorry, I was trying to find power. Is this a resident, or is this, we're contracting with someone that's not a resident?
Preferably not.
Okay, that was,
You usually don't choose somebody that lives in the city just to avoid any conflicts.
Love it.
So it's normally somebody who lives outside the city, and it's advertised as an independent contractor type of service, and we can do an RFP and get submissions.
One of the questions I asked, Ken, when we talked about this at our budget retreat at the start of the year and first proposed this idea, I had inquired about the cost of this kind of an officer, and particularly in comparison to what we might spend with a volunteer Board of Adjustment on trainings that they might go to. And I don't know that I ever saw an analysis on that front, but do you have a sense of the cost of this hearing officer compared to
my understanding of the cost per hour for a hearings officer is anywhere between 50 to 120 or something like that per hour. So yeah, that's going to cost a little bit more up front just for their effort on that. But it is good to point out that we do offer training for our Board of Adjustment and that we do pay for that. So to get a specific analysis, I'm not able to give that to you right now, but there would be a little bit of balance there.
Yeah, I wonder if you even have a sense of how many of our Board of Adjustments took advantage of any training opportunities. Was that common or rare?
We did try to have some training here on site for them largely, but we did invite them to attend other training. So I suppose if it turns out that in the analysis this is going to cost the city just a little bit more, I would say it's worth it to end up with a situation that's going to offer a more fair and balanced review of these type of requests.
One hesitation I have, and I guess this isn't really a question, but more of a comment, and maybe I should save it for after the public hearing portion, but I appreciate the volunteer spirit of our city, and I'm a little saddened to see us. I guess I know a lot of people who have wanted to be involved in different ways and haven't been able to be involved, have asked for opportunities to serve in the city, be involved in various ways, and the Board of Adjustment was an opportunity that people could have been involved and gotten involved in what happens in our city, and it's sad to see that go.
And to that comment, and I've only been a part of a situation once, but it was actually very uncomfortable so this is very litigious in nature. And so you have citizens and neighbors. So I actually love the idea of it being someone outside, a little bit more fair, because it doesn't pit neighbors. I love volunteerism on any other level, but at this point it is a
against neighbor.
Neighbor against neighbor.
Okay.
So, just on that
And
note.
if I may, my observations I didn't, and I won't specify exactly what they were, but there have been those situations where there have been personal feelings involved, where someone gets up and really, has an emotional situation that they're trying to get a variance for, and you feel a little bit of tendency leaning towards them because, you might know them or whatever. I also, in another situation, there was at least one member of the Board of Adjustment who, in his review, made comments that were not necessarily following the letter of the law that we were looking for with the variance, the 5 criteria, and it was more like, well, I think this is good. We should just let him do it. And I just thought, I hope that doesn't get caught by somebody, But to me, that's not the way judicial review should occur.
Sure.
And at $150 an hour, I'm wondering how I become an appeal authority. No, I'm teasing.
The Plan Commission, looks like it was 5-0, unanimous. Is that correct?
No, yes, 5-0. Yes, it was unanimous.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Ken? This is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to the public at this time. If you get up, please state your name.
I just had a question. So I didn't quite understand. So
Jacob
Zantz, yeah. This person, are they just like working here full time, or it's just by contract, right? So twice a year on average they'll come in and do it for 40 hours or however long it takes. And
I think it's just based on the case, right?
Based on
Yeah, it's more
like
like
2 hours?
2 or 3
Okay.
hours
Less
every.
than 2 hours,
A
probably.
year. Sounds
Well,
like.
no,
Per
it's per
instance.
application.
Oh, per application, but we're only meeting, what the track record has been is what, once or twice a year that the Board of Adjustment has been meeting?
I think Ken said 2 or 3 times on average a year, and the hearings normally take about an hour. And so that's all that person would be hired to do, although there would be some additional time in drafting the
Prep work.
decision. So there would be some paperwork in addition to the hour of actual doing the hearing that we would pay for it.
So based on past history, maybe 5 to 10 hours at the most a year, annually.
that answers my question. Thanks.
Thanks, Jacob. Anyone else? See none, we'll close the public hearing at this time and bring it back up here for additional comments or discussion. Or a motion.
I make the motion that we adopt ordinance to 2017-29, amending the city code sections as previously read by Mayor Pro Tem Jensen, relating to replacing the Pleasant Grove City Board of Adjustments with a hearings officer, which is a different type of appeal authority, which will be effective July 1st, 2017.
Motion by Sid, a second.
Second.
Second by Lynn. By voice, Lynn.
Yes.
Eric, yes. Sid,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Diana.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. All right. Item 9F, public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2017-30, amending the city code Title 3, Chapter 16, Transit Merchants and Street Vendors, amending Section 3-16-4, definitions, and adding a subsection 16B, mobile food trucks, regulating the licensing and permitting requirements for food trucks, amending subsections 7 and 9 to remove bonding requirements. Tina.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, we have had a transient merchant and street vendor ordinance for quite some time. However, there was not a specific provision for mobile food trucks in the past because, as I'm sure we're all aware, this has been a booming new business model, and because the state legislature actually enacted some state code this year in the legislature outlining some of the requirements that cities must now adhere to. Prior to this, there was no uniformity with regard to licensing food trucks. Each municipality made their own decisions as to how much the fees were, and whether or not they would accept a business license from an adjacent municipality, or whether they would charge each mobile food truck a brand new licensing fee for their municipality. The state stepped in and made some requirements on the municipalities regulating how we can regulate the food trucks. Part of that is that they have mandated that we require or that we accept any business license from any other municipality or or county government within the state as a valid license here in Pleasant Grove, with the caveat that they also provide proof of the required insurance limits and fire inspection and health inspection. So this ordinance addition is just basically to take care of those issues that have already been regulated by the state and just codify them in our own local ordinance so that there's no question about how we're going to regulate these. The other issue is the state did allow or specifically stated that municipalities can continue to use their land use ordinances and regulate mobile food trucks. We do have another ordinance that will be coming in front of you that will be amending Title 10, which is our land use ordinance section, and have some additional restrictions or regulations regarding food trucks. But that ordinance has not been noticed for tonight's public hearing, so we're only taking action on the business license portion. Okay. Do you have any questions about any of the items that are in the ordinance itself?
Do you have a slide that has the language, or?
I don't. It's
okay.
I can read. The relevant provisions if you'd like.
No, that's okay. I guess the question that I had, I want to understand the new state-created reciprocity arrangement. I've spoken with people that were involved in the passage of that, and my understanding is that the reciprocity applies to more than simply they don't have to pay a fee, but we can't restrict in ways that another jurisdiction might also not restrict. Is that right? Is that your understanding of?
So I can read you the exact language. It shall be unlawful for any person or entity to operate or permit another to operate a mobile food truck business within the municipal boundaries of Pleasant Grove City without first having obtained and possess a current business license from Pleasant Grove City or any political subdivision of the state of Utah. So if they go to American Fork and comply with American Fork's business licensing regulations and have a business license from American Fork, we can't add anything to those requirements to obtain the business license. If we have different zoning regulations, for example, about where food trucks can operate in our city or the hours that they can operate, then those regulations I think we still have control over. Does that make sense? In other words, if one city required a background check and another city didn't, if you've got the business license from the city that didn't require it, we could not require one.
But if one city requires you to move every 4 days, hypothetically, and another city doesn't have any requirement like that, we could impose a requirement that another city doesn't?
Because that's a land use type. That's not a business license regulation.
And that's separate from what we're talking
Separate
about.
from what we're doing tonight. The question of how long they can be in one place will be in the Title 10 ordinance that is not before you tonight.
And Tina, do we know when that will be coming before us?
At the next meeting, I believe, the next
June 6th.
June 6th.
So the location where the business license was taken out, they have to adhere to, or they still have to adhere to the rules of the town that they're in,
The land use rules.
the land use rules.
So the idea was is that we needed to provide some consistency and some predictability to the food truck vendors, right? They don't want to come to Pleasant Grove and pay $50 for a business license and then have to go to Lehigh and pay $250 to operate in Lehigh. So the state legislature was trying to create sort of a predictable level playing field for everyone by regulating the type, what we can say about the business license. The state also, and I apologize, I neglected to mention this, the state also said that we cannot charge the full fee for somebody that has a business license in American Fork. We can still charge them a nominal processing fee for coming in and our staff time and reviewing all their documents and making sure they've got the health inspections and their fire inspections. And so our fee for that will be added to the consolidated fee schedule, and it's going to be $25. And our normal business license for anybody who's new, who comes in and doesn't have a business license in another jurisdiction, is $100.
Right.
$25 is a one-time, or that's an annual?
It's just a one-time, just for processing their permit here.
Why wouldn't it be annual?
Well,
because isn't all the other business licenses?
You're right. They are. You're right. It would be
Okay.
a recurring fee. If they came back the next season and wanted a license again, they would pay the $25 again, register again.
So does that reflect that in here, or do we?
It just says that it will be on the consolidated fee schedule.
Any other questions for Tina? I know the applicants are here.
Well, we got a comment from our planner.
Oh, sorry, Daniel. I'm just ignoring you tonight. Sorry.
It's all right. If you guys allow me, I will read the part of the state legislation that clarifies on that.
Come forward.
It says, nothing in this subsection prevents a political subdivision from enforcing the political subdivision's land use regulations, zoning, and other ordinances in relation to the operation of a food truck. So they were being very clear that what state passed was just regarding licensing, nothing regarding land use.
So there's, the applicant for this is just the staff doing state law. There's not, the application I think you're referring to is the
June
land
6th.
use, and that's June 6th.
All right. Just getting ahead of myself. Sorry. Okay. All right. Do we have any other questions before we? Oh, it's a public hearing, so never mind. Are we done for Tina? Okay. We'll open it up for a public hearing. Please remember to state your name for us.
Hello, my name is Connor Boyack. So I got some room to work with. My name, is Connor Boyack again. I am president of Libertas Institute. We're a free market think tank in Utah. And the the reference state food truck law is one of our creation. We proposed this last year following significant research in most cities around the state, looking at what the existing ordinances were, cost of licenses and so forth, meeting with many of the food truck owners and hearing the stories that they've been going through. So I'll give a little bit of additional context for the state law that precipitated some of the changes, and then I have several concerns that I think would suggest at a minimum a continuance rather than voting on this tonight, because it needs some, in my opinion, some additional work. It was characterized that the legislature enacted this law out of a desire for consistency. I would say that's incorrect. The concern of the legislature was one of redundancy. If you can think of food truck owners going city to city having to get multiple inspections of multiple types and get multiple licenses, some food trucks have gone out of business because of that, because of the cost of regulatory compliance, the cost of the fees themselves. Some of the larger food truck or companies have to hire staff dedicated just to regulatory compliance. These are small, lean and mean operations. The profit margin on food is razor thin, oftentimes, except if you're Waffle Love. Their stuff is cheap and they charge a lot of money, so they have a lot better profit margin.
Really
but
good. It's really good.
And it's really good. But I should have had that come out here. That's what we did with the legislature. We had the food trucks come, and that's how we kind of sweetened the deal and got everyone to vote for our bill.
Well, wherever they are, my children are.
And I'm not joking. So, but the concern wasn't so much consistency; it was one of redundancy, the unfairness and the injustice for food trucks to have to deal with unnecessary inspections. If they get an inspection in one city and they're deemed safe, why the next day do they have to go get an inspection in a different city to operate? So that was the primary concern for legislators. Let's see, I believe it was Councilman Stanley that asked about can other cities restrict more than other cities? The answer is actually yes and no. As it pertains to land use ordinances, yes. Pleasant Grove could regulate far more aggressively than another city that takes a laissez-faire approach. State law would allow for that. State law does not allow for doing anything pertaining to the license. And so, for example, if you're curious to look this up later, it's Senate Bill 250 that created this law. Actually just went into effect, I think, a week or two ago. And if you go look that up, it's on line 118, and I'll read it here. What does that mean? I'm new here.
That means you're out of time, but we'll be lenient and give you some
Okay,
more time.
I'll be brief. I didn't realize there was a time limit. Line 118 says, if a food truck operator presents the documents described in the previous code, the political subdivision, in this case Pleasant Grove, may not impose additional license qualification requirements on the operator before issuing the license. And so if we're talking land use, yes. If we're talking license requirements, then the answer is no. Pleasant Grove cannot add anything to that. And that's the concern that I have tonight. I'll give you a couple references here where I think the proposal you have before you exceeds what state law actually allows you to require. The example was mentioned of the background check by your city attorney, one city requiring a background check in another. And I know that was just a hypothetical, but just for the information of the council, state law actually prohibits that as well. You can't require a background check as a condition of issuing a license. Okay, so very briefly, some of the concerns that we have with the proposal entail the requirement for issuing a license of things that state law disallows. So, for example, and I don't know if you have this before you, if not, I'll at least try and summarize it. In subsection 3, conditions and requirements, there's a paragraph D that says that every applicant for a license, has to provide, all sorts of insurance. It gives the specific amounts, who should be named on the policy, and so forth. Pleasant Grove is within its right to require that of applicants originating in Pleasant Grove, but the state law prohibits that being required of people who are getting a reciprocal license, who are licensed elsewhere and come to Pleasant Grove. The proposal before you, as I read it, does not make that distinction. It just says every applicant for a license. So that would need to be clarified, that cannot be required of people outside the city. So for example, someone in, really any other city. In E, it says that every applicant for a license has to have a valid fire inspection from either Pleasant Grove City or Utah County. Imagine a food truck in Salt Lake County, let's say Draper, who comes down here. They already have a valid fire inspection. According to state law, Pleasant Grove shall issue a license if they meet the criteria of presenting the fire inspection and other things. State law disallows you from selecting or narrowing it to Pleasant Grove City or Utah County. And so that language would have to be removed. They would just have to, or you could require that of an applicant in Pleasant Grove, someone originating in Pleasant Grove. You could say, we want you to get a Pleasant Grove fire inspection. State law would allow that. State law would not allow you to require that of the reciprocal license that has been mentioned. I have just a few more. Let's see, it references the reduced licensing fee in F5. And then down below in subsection 4, it says, references the consolidated fee schedule. I know it was mentioned tonight. I think typical legislative preference is that the changes would all be included here. You've been told that that will change later, but the fee schedule, as I see it here, is not being amended as part of this. And so that's a more minor thing. F1 through 4 is where we're talking about the reciprocal licenses. 1 through 3 are okay. This is where you provide the business license, the fire permit, the health permit, However, 4 exceeds state law, and you're not allowed to require that of a reciprocal license. So proof of motor vehicle insurance and general liability insurance and amounts required by the issuing political subdivision. That might be nice to have, but state law actually disallows the city from requiring that to issue the reciprocal license. You're not allowed to ask for it. The law is quite clear that if they meet the 3 criteria of license, fire permit, and health inspection certificate, you shall, or the city shall, issue the license.
So if you're driving a motor vehicle, you don't have to have it doesn't have to be insured?
Well, there's separate laws dealing with that, yeah. But if they're lapsed on their insurance for a week, for example, and they're dealing with that, they just can't be denied the business license. Separate law governs motor vehicle insurance. Right? State law simply says that you cannot condition a business license based on that if they're in between for 2 days or whatever. 4 exceeds state law. 5 and 6, I think this is just an issue with poor formatting. These are nested under F, but they aren't like 1 through 3 as things that an applicant for a reciprocal license shall do. Present this, that, and the other. 5, I think, should be separated out into G. It's not dealing with what the applicant shall provide. It's a new item, so this is poor formatting that 5 and 6 shouldn't be nested. In 6, it talks about the expiration date, matching up. So I think that's just a drafting error. G, it's, let me skip ahead to H very briefly. All applicants must provide proof of compliance with all applicable federal and state laws regarding permits and inspections. That's very ambiguous. Aside from the permits and the certificates that are already mentioned and required both under city and state law, the question for city staff would be, what other proof of compliance is required, of what and in what form would that be? There could be many other, federal things and so forth, but unless the state law allows the city to require it and the city spells that out, I think that's a bit of a concern as to what that entails. Finally, in G, I believe it would be actually illegal for you to pass this tonight because of the continuance on the other half of the policy that is not on agenda for action tonight. You would be passing an ordinance that references a non-existing section of code. As I looked it up, I think that's an entirely new section. If I read that and understand correctly, this Title 10, Chapter 15, Subchapter 48. Here it requires businesses to comply with those ordinances, and you're being asked to take action tonight that hinges compliance with this section on another section that has not been debated and voted on. So I think that's a very strong legal concern. And I'll only mention this in passing only because your city attorney briefly mentioned what was in the other one. I think our position would be that the other one needs some work as well because of what I think is a unconstitutional restriction on mobile food vendors, requiring things of them that are not required of other businesses of like kind in terms of a restriction on the number of days. This has been litigated elsewhere and would be litigated, I think, in Pleasant Grove if that type of arbitrary restriction were to be enacted on food truck owners specifically. Be happy to talk with city staff or the council offline about that. I just learned about this issue this afternoon, so I apologize that I'm a little more unprepared and didn't anticipate the clock, so thanks for giving me a little bit extra time. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Connor.
Thanks, Connor. Appreciate that.
Any other, Tina, I'll ask you. I wrote them down. You want to address them now, or?
Address each and every one of those in the open meeting. I'm happy to have you continue it to the June 6th, and I'll be happy to talk to Mr. Boyack offline. Obviously, we may not agree on all of the interpretations that he listed tonight.
Okay. We're still open for public hearing, though, if any individual would like to get up and speak. I hesitated, Jacob. I waited for you.
I know. Thanks for hesitating. I know Connor's not a citizen of Pleasant Grove. I am. I after listening to him, not doing as much research as him, I do agree with a lot of things that he did say. So I just want to put my voice behind it as a citizen of Pleasant Grove. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Lori Williams, I also would like to actually have this conversation in the purview of the public to have everything addressed. I would like to hear it between Attorney Peterson and Connor Boyack. That's my request. Thanks.
What's your comment? Anyone else?
I agree with that. I second that motion.
Name?
Curtis Miles.
Thank you.
Motion.
Anyone else?
The public hearing motion.
Mark Bishop, I would suggest, request that they have the offline discussion and come prepared on June 6th to bring that to the public where they've had time to get their ducks in a row.
Okay, thanks. All right, at that time, we'll close public hearing and bring it back up here for discussion for council. We've had a lot here before us, and so let's have a good discussion.
One of the concerns I have is that we have applicants that have taken time and waited a long time to have some resolution here, and they're in our midst here in our meeting. And I do think this ordinance needs more work, and there are some concerns that are legal concerns and structural concerns and other issues. But it's unfortunate. I guess maybe this isn't something that we can take action on. I'm just stating it for the record and for the world to know that it's unfortunate that we have to continue this for the inconvenience it might be for the applicant.
And I agree, but this is also citywide, so this is not just, right?
It is.
Okay.
Well, and I would just note for the record, the applicant actually asked to have his application held in suspension till like August. So the delay is not necessarily against
Unreasonable.
what he's asked for.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful to know.
Okay. If there's any further discussion, I'll call for a motion, whether to proceed, continue, or...
I'd like to make the motion that we continue item 2017, ordinance 2017-30, to allow time for Attorney Peterson and Mr. Boyack to meet. I know this is the first time this is being brought forth to our city. There's still some things to iron out. Sounds like there's experience and knowledge on both sides that we can gain as a city from making this a citywide ordinance. So I'd like to make the motion that we continue this to the June 6th meeting.
All right, we have a motion by Sid. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Lynn. Do I still need to take a voice vote on this to continue it? Okay. So Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric, yes. Diana?
Yes.
Okay, item is continued to June 6th. All right, that concludes the public hearing part. We're moving on to item 10A. This is a continued item to consider for adoption a resolution 20-17-031 authorizing the mayor to enter into an interlocal cooperative agreement between Utah County and Pleasant Grove City for the administration of the 2017 municipal elections by vote by mail and providing for effective date. Tina?
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, this resolution is asking you to approve the interlocal agreement between Utah County and the City of Pleasant Grove to administer the 2017 municipal elections. The relevant things that you probably need to be aware of is that this agreement binds the city to provide manpower, facilities, and equipment for the candidate filing process, which we will do through our city recorder. We are to provide manpower, facilities, and equipment for receiving and processing all financial disclosures required by the state code or the city code, which we will also do through our city recorder. Accept responsibility to keep candidates and the public up to date and current on all legal requirements governing candidates' campaigns, including candidate filing, campaign financial disclosures, and all local ordinances governing campaigns, which is something that we've traditionally done anyway. Something new is that we will be obligated to provide a single voter service center within the city Such center is not intended to be a polling place. Rather, it is a place for voters with issues to go and receive help. We get to choose the place where that service center will be located within the city. The operational hours will need to be the same as the polls, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on election day. Anyone who goes to this service center who has a problem with not being on the register rolls or didn't get their mail-in ballot will be able to vote, but they will be counted as provisional ballots coming out of that. The other items that you should know about are that we are committing to financially to the county to pay certain fees, which are outlined in the resolution. And then one thing you should probably be aware of is that in the event that there are more than the estimated percentages of return ballot postage needed, that we would pay more than what is actually listed here. However, staff's done a rough calculation and estimates that it probably wouldn't be more than another $1,500 at most. I think those are the things that you need to be aware of. Do you have any specific questions?
Any questions for Tina on this item?
So, Tina, give me the scenario if we don't pass this resolution. I have concerns about the expense of vote by mail, the issues we've talked about in the past. Given that our new money could be going towards a higher priority of the public, we have discussed a few times whether vote by mail is the best and highest use. What happens if we vote down this resolution right now?
I believe we've already given the county our notice that we were going to use them, so. And I believe that that discussion was already held and the council authorized them to move forward on that.
I guess this is more of a hypothetical. I mean, if we reverse course at this point, what is the implication for the city?
Then we would have to make arrangements to hold the election and the polling places ourselves and incur that cost.
But it's a lower cost than the additional $28,000 now that we're talking about.
I honestly don't know how much it would cost.
Yeah,
we had to rent the machines from the county.
Yeah, so we used to hold our own elections. I don't remember when it was, 3 or 4 years back, we decided to contract out with the county and use the electronic voting machines. They're no longer going to have those, so now it's either vote by mail or do our own. I don't know if we have the number exactly, but it would be cheaper for us to do that, to do our own. There is a lot of more moving parts and things that Kathy would need to do in order to make that happen. The vote by mail, there's a little nuance here depending on what happens with Representative Chaffetz. If he decides that he's going to resign before sometime before November, then there's a chance that there'll be a special election, and the county will do that vote by mail.
That's an additional cost for us for additional mailed ballots?
No, because it's not going to be on the same ballot.
Okay.
I don't know at that point if there's some sort of way to negotiate a price break or something, since the ballots are going out anyway. So there's a few moving parts as far as that's concerned, but in relation to what this interlocal says, it's given us the cost and says this: if you're going to do vote by mail, this is what it is. So that's what you have before you.
Right.
If we were to reverse course and not adopt this, and then again we've already committed to the county, it puts us in an awkward position as far as prior decisions that we've already made.
Sure.
If we truly want to understand what the priorities of the citizens are, then we need to make every available opportunity for them to vote. And the statistics coming back from vote by mail from cities, specifically in Utah, are not just a 5 or 10% increase in voter turnout, but we're talking around 25, 30% voter turnout. And that's where we're going to learn the real priorities of the citizens, not necessarily a survey out of 38,000 people where we get 600 responses back. It's going to be at the polls where people come and have the opportunity, not the polls, but in their own home, where they have the opportunity to vote and research the issues and return that. And putting a price on that, I think, is probably one of the best votes I can make as a council person, to allow people that opportunity of all ages, those who don't have the ability to get down to the polls physically, those who work, or moms or parents that don't have the opportunity to get down because whatever reason, we are going to now make this much more accessible to them and really learn the priorities of the citizens based on that voter turnout. The other issues, I actually attended a recorder's training because I wanted to learn more about this myself. And as far as fraud, there has not been a case reported yet of voter fraud in Utah related to the mail-in ballots. The fraud that could occur would happen within the home, and they gave the example of a parent who might fill out the application for their child. We don't have much control over that, but fraud can also happen in person. Electioneering can happen at polls. So it goes both ways, but there has not been a case reported yet that the county was aware of, at least at this training, regarding mail-in ballots. I also learned that I know another issue was people being able to see who voted for what person or candidate, and it's actually covered up, the section that you bubble in. That section is covered. There is someone that takes off the signature portion and verifies signature with county records and then passes the ballot on that goes through a machine. So I learned quite a lot at that training, and I'm glad I attended because I'm able to answer questions to the public. But for me, this amount, it is the priority of the city. We need to place priority on getting as many people out to the polls to vote on important issues in our city. So do we need to open it up?
Any other questions for
'Cause
Tina?
I'm ready to make a...
You're ready, okay. Any others?
No.
Lynn, any? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I make the motion that we adopt resolution 2017-031, authorizing the mayor to enter into an interlocal cooperative agreement between Utah County and Pleasant Grove City for the administration of the 2017 municipal elections by vote by mail and providing for an effective date.
Motion by Sid, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Diana. By voice, Lynn.
Yes.
Ben.
No.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric, yes. Diana?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, motion passes.
It's not a public hearing.
Thank you, Tina.
Kathy, in regards to what Scott said, there's not going to be a special ballot that goes out if Representative Chaffetz. Okay.
Same ballot, yeah.
Not that I doubted you, Scott. Just want to verify.
I'm 100% okay with that because I actually do get things wrong every once in a while.
Okay, Mark, we're almost to you, almost here. Let me read it here. To consider, item number 10B, to consider for adoption ordinance 2017-31, amending Title 2-2E, Beautification and Shade Tree Advisory Commission of the Pleasant Grove Municipal Code by implementing a water conservation program, providing an avenue to elect a secretary, treasurer, historian, and other housekeeping changes, and providing for effective date. Mark Bishop, come on up.
Thank you. There are just a half dozen or so changes in this bylaws article that we'd like to review with the city council and seek your approval on those changes. So I'll just draw your attention to, does everyone have a copy of this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second page, item L, 2-2E-2, item L. We're proposing that one be taken out. It says to participate in the development of periodic updating a street tree master plan and arboretum master plan. We felt like that was, it's not something we participated in extensively and felt like that was beyond the scope of the beautification commission. Additionally, with the water conservation plan, which we've spoken to you several times about, we feel like that it was a new initiative that's taking significant time and effort, and we like to put our focus in areas such as that. On the next page, item Q, that same section, to provide and implement a water conservation program, which is well underway. We're continuing to, we've received funds from the city, also from sponsors, and that has been a great effort. We've had some great success, and that is continuing.
Great effort, thank you.
Here. The next page is under 2-2E-5, term of office. Item C. We are proposing that be stricken consecutive, where it says consecutive terms. No person shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms on the commission. Partial terms shall not be considered in determining whether a person has served 2 consecutive terms. We have some wonderful contributors on the commission that have been around for several. And as we visit as a commission, all were in agreement that that ought not to be a limitation of the commission. Item 2-2E-6, item C. There's an addition to that on filling the vacancy. Filling a vacancy in the event that a member's office becomes vacant, such vacancy shall, and the change here, preferably be filled for the unexpired term by someone from that person's neighborhood. In the past, that just said be filled by someone in the neighborhood. We found that that's somewhat restrictive and somewhat difficult in certain neighborhoods to be able to find someone from that neighborhood. So we'd like to still continue that, but have that as a preference rather than a requirement. Continuing on that item, the next change, if after efforts to identify a person from that neighborhood or unsuccessful, a person from any other neighborhood within the city may be selected. On the next page, 2-2E-8 meetings. Item A, chairperson. What it currently said or says, the commission shall elect one of its members to be the chairperson and another as vice chair. The addition, other commission elected officers shall include a secretary, treasurer, and historian. Additional roles may be assigned by the commission as needed. The current, following that, says the chairperson shall conduct all meetings and shall serve for 1 year. Elections for chairperson, addition, and other elected commission officers current shall be held annually at the first January meeting of the year. Suggested we take out a chairperson and replace that with elected officers may serve consecutive terms. Additional assigned roles may be less than 1 year or extend beyond 2 years.
And Mark, speaking of those positions, do you have all of those filled?
We do. And we have additional assignments as well that are very helpful, effective in moving the work forward.
In fact, how many do you have? And do you have some, what neighborhood do you not have represented?
The only neighborhood right now that we do not have represented is Monkeytown.
Monkeytown.
So we are going to make efforts this next month to.
Lynn?
Yeah, I'm looking at Lynn right here.
If you know people, please recommend them.
Maybe Linda.
He knows people in Monkeytown.
They have an application online they can fill out, and we'd welcome their applications and review those.
There you go.
Continuing to item 2-2E-9, staff support. This is just a minor change to the title. The director of, rather than leisure services, the title is Parks and Recreation. Director of Parks and Recreation shall provide all required technical administrative support for the commission. And that, got one on the.
That's it.
That's it.
So Mark, thank you for all your time on this. I know Dion helped quite a bit on this.
Absolutely.
I'm surprised he didn't want to get up here and share some time with you, but we'll let him sit back there.
Likes to let other people have the glory, so we appreciate his support.
It is a pleasure to attend your meetings. It is very well run and organized, so thank you on behalf of the council.
And it's
So-
a great service to the community. The whole conservation water campaign has been just a joy to watch, and I'm thrilled. So.
And I know other communities are watching you as well. I had a resident from Linden contact me who's on a committee over there that wanted to get the yard signs and start recognizing homes over there for the beautification award. I was really interested in how we ran things, so I might even tell them when your next meeting is, if that's okay, so they can come by and just see how you guys do things.
And give them time right up front. So
Yeah, awesome.
Put them to work.
When are your meetings, Mark?
Meetings are the second Thursday of each month.
At what time and where?
From 7 to 8:30.
In the basement?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Mark, did you wear a suit just for us?
Just got off work and came over, so.
You look sharp.
Thanks.
Anyway, any questions for Mark?
On 2-2E-6C, where you say, you express a preference rather than a mandatory requirement for finding someone from the neighborhood. I'm curious if you have a specific amount of efforts you expect. You know, you say if after efforts to identify a person are unsuccessful, is there a certain amount of time or a certain level of commitment of efforts that you anticipate? Or
Time, we haven't put any expectation with that, but what we have done in this, and I appreciate the comment because I think we ought to clarify that. What we've done in the past and leading up to this was to go to our past winners and reach out to those. Now, when I say past winners, I'm talking about our Yard of the Month winners from June, July, and August. And we have at least 4 to 5 years of history with that. And we have those records, so we've gone to those and reached out. In fact, we haven't, as yet, not been able to find a member of a community when we put forth that effort. And it hasn't even had to go very deep. Monkey Town was one that I personally did that effort with, and it was only 2 people into the search that we found. So I think what we propose, Ben, on that is to reach out to those past winners and extend it to them as well. You know, who do you know? And we've found that those 2 efforts to be successful in at least 2 neighborhoods where we lacked a member.
That's helpful context for me. I don't know if we need to codify that procedure, but it's good just to appreciate what your procedure is.
I don't think we do. Yeah. I think we're good. All right. Do we have any other questions for Mark? Keep him up here for a while.
Just thank you for your service. Am I okay to go ahead and make
Yeah,
a
you're
motion?
good.
I adopt ordinance, or not just me, I consider for adoption ordinance 2017-31, amending Title 2-2E Beautification and Shade Tree Advisory Commission of the Pleasant Grove Municipal Code by implementing a water conservation program, providing an avenue to elect a secretary, treasurer, historian, and other housekeeping changes, and providing for an effective date.
And I'll second.
Motion by Sid, a second by Ben. Lynn?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric? Yes. Diana?
Yes.
And Ben?
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you. And I just wanted to put in one plug with the water conservation effort. We have a pledge that can be taken. Our commission members are working through that. Several have done that. We invite the city council as well as citizens here to go on to conserve.plgrove.org or beautiful.plgrove.org and take the pledge. There's some bi-monthly drawing that takes place with some nice incentives for taking that pledge, and the greatest benefit is what will take place in your own home with water conservation.
I think we can promote that on the website, right?
Yeah,
Get
that'd be
that pledge out
awesome.
there. Okay. Okay, item 10C, to consider for adoption a proclamation declaring May 21st, 2017 to May 27th, 2017 as American Red Cross Week. Tina?
Mayor Daniels was approached by a representative from the American Red Cross requesting that the City Council consider approving or adopting this proclamation declaring the week of May 21st through May 27th as American Red Cross Week based on our policy regarding proclamations to be considered. The Red Cross certainly fits within our criteria of being a nationally recognized organization that has done significant service, not only within our community, but worldwide. I don't need to read the proclamation. That's usually the mayor's.
See, this is why he's not here tonight.
Yeah. The mayor usually does that in asking for the.
I'll read it. I'll be proud to read it. You just let me know when.
Take it away.
Okay. Proclamation American Red Cross Week. Whereas the American Red Cross represents a historic commitment of service, patriotism, relief, and compassion. And whereas 100 years ago, the American Red Cross was formed as a national effort to support servicemen and women and all others in need. And whereas the Red Cross has adapted to the needs of the community and striven to provide service during times of conflict, natural disaster, and other unrest. And whereas on May 23rd, 2017, the American Red Cross in central and southern Utah will be celebrating 100 years of when the chapter was formed. And whereas the Pleasant Grove City would like to join in the 100-year celebration of American Red Cross. Now, therefore, you want me to read my name or Mayor Daniels?
Read your name as
All
Mayor
right,
Pro Tem.
Eric Jensen, do hereby recognize May 21st to the 27th, 2017 as American Red Cross Week and call for this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. And with that, I guess I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion that we adopt the proclamation just read, declaring May 21st, 2017 to May 27th, 2017 as American Red Cross Week.
Motion by Ben, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Sid. All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's celebrate by giving blood.
You first.
I'm not very good at it.
All right, item 10D, to consider for adoption of ordinance 2017-32, amending Title I, Chapter 7, Elections of the Pleasant Grove Municipal Code to comply with recent changes in the election laws of the state of Utah regarding campaign finance regulations and providing for an effective date. Tina.
Mayor and Council, the purpose of this ordinance is, as it states in the short title, for us to come into compliance with recent changes made in the state election code by the Utah State Legislature in its 2017 legislative session. Particularly, the changes deal with defining what an anonymous contribution limit means, which is $50 or an amount less than $50 that is specified in the ordinance of a municipality and is from a donor whose name is unknown. The other changes reflected are, sorry, while I scroll down here. Clarifies some details on the campaign finance disclosure statements that we have traditionally had candidates file. The new ordinance outlines the requirements that each candidate shall deposit a contribution in a separate campaign account in a financial institution and may not deposit or mingle any campaign contributions received into a personal or business account. And then in a year in which a municipal primary is held, each candidate who will participate in the municipal primary shall file a campaign finance statement with the municipal clerk or recorder no later than 7 days before the primary election. And then a campaign finance statement required under this section is considered filed if it is received in the municipal clerk or recorder's office by 5 p.m. on the date that it's due. Section 17A-3, contents of a campaign finance statements, just includes some additional details, which A1, report all of the candidates' itemized and total contributions, including in-kind and other non-monetary contributions, received up to and including 5 days before the campaign finance statement is due, excluding a contribution previously reported. Expenditures made up to and including 5 days before the campaign finance statement is due, excluding an expenditure previously reported. Identify for each contribution the amount, the name of the donor, if known, and for each expenditure the amount of the expenditure and name of the recipient of the expenditure. Or report the total amount of all contributions and expenditures if the candidate receives $500 or less in contributions and spends $500 or less on the candidate's campaign. We've changed the language, a slight cleanup, technical in subsection 2, just changing the words reporting limit to anonymous contribution limit. And I believe that's all the changes.
And that will be reflected in the packet that's handed out to the candidates, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's coming up. What's the date again?
The election?
Where they have to...
Declaration window.
June 1st is the day,
7th.
huh? Okay.
Yep.
I've got a quick question, Tina. On 17A1EB, it offers the possibility of the alternative of a $50 amount, some amount less than $50 if we have an ordinance that specifies one. I just was curious if we do. I don't believe we do in Pleasant Grove. Okay. And then the other question I had was, every one of these changes is mandated by the state law?
Yes. So the bulk of this came from the city recorder in her trainings with her recorder's organization with regard to what needed to be changed.
Good. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, if not, so I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion that we amend Title I, well, adopt ordinance 2017-32, amending Title I, Chapter 7 elections of the Pleasant Grove Municipal Code to comply with recent changes in the election laws of the state of Utah regarding campaign finance regulations and providing for an effective date.
Motion by Ben, do I have a second?
Second.
We'll give that to Lynn.
All right.
All right. Second by Lynn. By voice, Ben?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Eric? Yes. Diana?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you must have the last one, huh?
I do have the last one.
Item 10E, to consider adoption of Resolution 2017-33, amending fees for compiling, formatting, manipulating, packaging, summarizing, certifying, and tailoring records under Pleasant Grove City's Government Records Access and Management Act, GRAMA policy.
So Mayor and Council, our fees for responding to grandma requests were adopted in 2003. And so, as you can see, it's been a long time since we've done anything with them or changed them at all. We have been receiving a significant number of grandma requests over the last year. It has definitely made an impact on staff's time and efforts. And with regard to that, we are proposing that there be a slight change in the cost. The state code used to say that we had to provide the first 20 minutes of staff time for free. It now says 15 minutes, and so we're proposing that our resolution for fees mirrors the state requirement for 15 minutes. We used to charge $10 per hour over that first increment of time for free. We are suggesting that we increase that to $12.50 per hour. The state code prohibits us from charging really what the true cost of staff time is with regard to responding to these types of grandma requests, in that it says that we can only charge the hourly wage of the least paid staff person qualified to respond. So it doesn't take into account any of the time that Denise, the finance director, spends, or I spend, or Scott spends, or any of the other senior staff spend on compiling the information and making sure that the grandma request is responded to. It simply is going to try to recover a portion of the cost of staff time at the $12.50 an hour. Also, the other change is that the state law does not require the city to create a record. However, we have, and not just us, but other municipalities around the state, have received grandma requests asking us to basically compile information or format information in a way that we don't normally do so in the normal course of business. So the change, and this is pursuant to state law as well, allows us to make charges for providing the record in a different format or compiling a record in a different format than just making a copy of a document that we already have and handing it to them. Again, the substance of this is coming from the city recorder and her trainings.
Awesome, thank you. Do we have any questions for Tina?
One question I have, and I've heard multiple concerns expressed about the number of grandma requests that are required of citizens. I mean, it seems like simultaneously with the raising of our costs to pursue and perform grandma requests, we're also more frequently telling members of the public that we're not going to give you a document that was used in a public meeting or shown in a public meeting, and we're going to insist that you grandma request that. And so the conflux of both of those factors, in my view, tends to reduce the amount of transparency we have in the city and makes it more costly and more complicated for people to get their hands on things, and then more frequently are they told that they need to do that procedure. So I guess I would recommend, if we're going to increase costs, and there certainly is a need, or there's certainly a justification, we'll say, for some increase of costs, but there's certainly, in my view, also a value in making sure that we go to the farthest degree of of transparency when it comes to documents we use in public meetings to make sure packets are available to the public, information's in the hands of the public in ways that are above and beyond the call of duty, and would be my recommendation.
Just to respond to that, because I'm familiar with what you're saying. When we, as staff at this point, we want it through official channels when there's a request for a document. And part of that is there's an attorney review to see if there is something that needs to be redacted from that document or whatever. So if a resident comes and asks me, Scott, can I have a copy of that document? And for me to just turn it over and find out later that there's something on there that is actually private information or something that should be redacted, then that's my mistake. And so we've talked about it as staff. We want to make sure it's official channels. It's understood that residents have the right to request this information. And that's fine. That's exactly where we're at, and that's the way it's supposed to be. There is a cost to us, and all we're trying to do is to update our policy to what we can to help cover the cost of providing that. So to me, it would be great if it was just as simple as I need a document and here you go. At this point, I don't know if it's that simple. I mean, there's the process that we need to run it through.
Right, and I guess what my suggestion is that we err on the side of being overly producing in proactive ways and include on our packet on our website anything that we could reasonably imagine most people would ever want to see. If it's going to be used in a public meeting, let's do the attorney review in advance and make sure if it's going to be used in a public meeting, we don't want any proprietary or confidential information on it anyway. And let's make sure it's clean and available to the public and put out there in advance if we can. So just my suggestion.
Okay.
Question, how many, I think we set a record last year. How many did we have last year?
That's a Kathy question.
54, and what are we this year? What are we at? Really? Okay.
We just got new ones this week. One today.
Okay. Any other questions for Tina? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I've got a quick question, sorry. What do we do with the revenue from grandma requests? Does it go into a fund to pay administrative staff? Does it go into a general fund? Where does the money go when we collect money from a grandma request? Just, this is a Denise question, I know she's not here, but where does that $5, $500, whatever it is, where does it go?
Yeah, so that is a Denise question, and I'm assuming we just have a revenue account, and it might be miscellaneous revenue in our budget, because this isn't a high dollar ticket thing that we would actually have a line item that says $10,000 or whatever. So I don't know exactly, but it is general fund money. It's not earmarked for anything else.
Okay, thanks.
Did you want to earmark it for roads?
Let's do that. Is that a motion, Councilwoman? Because I'll second it if it is.
No, I'd like to redact that.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd love to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2017-33, amending fees for compiling, formatting, manipulating, packaging, summarizing, certifying, or tailoring records under Pleasant Grove City's Government Records Access and Management Act, GRAMA.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Sid, by voice. Lynn?
Yes.
Diana?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Eric, yes. Sid?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Okay, item 11A was continued. Did we continue the June 6th or just until we know?
No, we set a date certain to June 6th. That was, I think, the motion when we
Yes, I believe
adopted
so.
the budget.
Okay. So item 12, review and discussion of the June 6th meeting. It looks like we have.
We don't have an agenda right now.
Okay. So it looks like.
Well, we sort of do because we continued a few items, but
Yes.
other than that.
Looks like I do have a notice of a council meeting of the Pleasant Grove, a joint Pleasant Grove City Council and Planning Commission on May 23rd, 2017.
Yeah, so that meeting's been canceled, and we will not be holding a meeting on the 30th either. Initially, we thought we were going to have a planning item that planning item is no longer happening.
We
so.
normally don't have one, so we don't need to issue.
No, there's no need to make anything. That's just by way of information.
Okay.
Did I hear an inaudible hallelujah right there?
Okay. All right, 13, neighborhood and staff business. Libby, anything? All right. Going around the room. Ken?
Okay, I just wanted to give Daniel a pat on the back for his work and for managing the heavy workload in the Community Development Department while I was gone at the conference. You can ask him about that.
Yeah.
It was a great conference. Came back with some good ideas for community visioning and how to improve Community Development Department. And
okay. Thank you. David? Dion?
Just mentioned last week during our planting test, out came and helped us, and they do an amazing job every year, and I forgot to mention that last week. It was a long day, but they did a great job.
Yeah, they did.
Planted the city in a day, so it was really nice.
That's awesome. Thank you. John, I can barely see you.
Nothing.
No? Okay. Chief? Sherry?
We had a nice event, which you all know because you were all there. And when we looked at the people counter on our security gates, just for the upper level, we don't have one for downstairs, hooked up at least. We had 1,557 on just the upper level. So we had, I imagine, at least another 400 who came downstairs and left before coming upstairs. So we had a lot of people there. It was kind of crazy. So if we do it again, we'll probably need to do it over 2 nights or have tickets or something like that, because we can't grow any more than that and not be kicked out by the fire department. So yeah, thank you. It's exciting. We've got some good things ahead for the library.
Yes, we do. Scott?
Tina and I will be meeting with the Historic Commission this Thursday. There were some concerns brought up, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, regarding what their role is and what our code says as far as what their role is. So we've reviewed that. We'll meet with them and go over that with them and make sure there's an understanding about what their role is as far as the commission's concerned. We also met, this was me, Tina, Chief Smith, and Dion, to discuss the archery, the bow and arrow, shooting a bow and arrow in city limits. As we reviewed it as staff, our recommendation is not to change our ordinance and to keep that intact, mainly just on a safety reason. We're sure there's a lot of people out there that if they were able to shoot a bow and arrow on their property, that would take all safety precautions. We're just not sure that everybody would do that. So from our perspective, our recommendation is just to keep the ordinance as is. If the council would want further exploration or further discussion, that's up to you. That was just our initial look at it and our initial recommendation.
Thank you.
A quick question on that. Does our ordinance allow for toy bows and like low?
It actually does, yeah.
Okay. How's it? What's the language? Do you remember from that
I
discussion?
think it exempts out toys.
Okay.
Exempts out toys, and it lists like guns and.
I'm just thinking of like PVC pipe bows and the kind of thing scout groups will use that are just not even a real bow, but are kind of toy-like. But
The exemption language would cover that.
it would cover that. Okay. Thanks.
Tina? Scott, do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Tina?
Nothing.
Daniel, we'll give you 3 minutes. What do you got?
Nothing.
Nothing? Thank you, though. Kathy? Diana?
Well, the 4 families of raccoons in my backyard just shouted for joy.
On the bow and arrow thing?
I'm serious. We have an epidemic.
Get traps. We have traps.
I have traps, but they're too smart. They move. They relocate in the yard. No, I had a delightful time at the library. This was, anyway, just I'm feeling very, very grateful. Very, very unselfish. You know, I had a large donor in town say to me, you know, usually cities come to donors asking for the cherry on top. Love that Pleasant Grove comes to their donors for elevators. Anyway, so it was wonderful.
Anything else?
No.
Sid? Ben?
This Thursday I'll be up in Salt Lake at the Utah Taxpayer Association's conference, so that should hopefully be productive information that they're going to provide this year at that conference. And on the topic of Test Out and the good work that they did in our neighborhood, next week we don't have a council meeting, so I can't announce this then, but the next week Rotary Club meeting on Thursday of next week at Chubby's, Noel Viejo will be our featured speaker, and that would be a meeting worth attending for those that are interested in the city.
Thank you. Anything else?
No.
I'll echo what Diana said about the library. It's a great opportunity. I think it was tremendous from a developer to step up and show that he truly cares about the community and what's going on in the children and the children's wing. And so that is exciting. And I was driving in today. I'm not surprised because, you know, I do work for a library, and I see the number up on the billboard of how many people go to our library. And I think you have a number of 15,000 a month, which is impressive. If you take into account the programs that you have on a daily basis, and then you walk in at any time just seeing the patrons, whether using the internet stations or reading a book or a magazine or have their laptop open, it's impressive that our little community library is that busy. And I believe it because I see what numbers are of other libraries, and it's very impressive. So thank you.
Yeah,
for that.
thanks to Sherry and her staff. So thank you.
And also, Eric did that. Eric worked that donation. That was, so shout out to Eric. Good job.
The Eric Jensen Children's Library.
Nope. I like St. John's better, so we'll go with that.
The Eric
So,
and Sid.
yeah. Okay, I don't have a count. That's right.
Oh, that's
Okay.
true.
The Eric
Would you
Jensen
like
And
an elevator?
the Diana Anderson Skybridge. Can we do that?
There we go. She liked
I
that.
love sky bridges.
We could give Eric a button on the elevator. The
I'll just-
Eric Jensen level 1 button.
I'll take a flower. All right, I don't have a calendar review because I think we don't have anything coming up, right? Okay, so we don't have to review that. Last item to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
Make the motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Only 2 hours. That was a good time.